So when it comes to your process, how do you break down a comic book arc or a comic book story before you begin to write, or how do you write?
I mean, once I have an idea for something, I think the most important part is identifying several key parts, because you can't break down the story until you answer several key questions, which is, what is the end of the story? What is ultimately going to happen in the end? What type of story is this? And what am I trying to say with this story? And what am I trying to say with this story builds into what ultimate character experience is the character going to go through? What's the dilemma that character faces? What's the journey? And what's the world? I mean, those are all, all those things kind of have to be synergetically tied together. And once you kind of have those questions answered, I find that I know the end. I can figure out the status quo or the beginning and what happens to upset the balance. It changes things. Identify the big beats. What's the character doing throughout this structure? Who are the antagonists? What are their desires and goals? How are these things going to compound against each other? I oftentimes look at what genre I'm in, and I study other genres. So whether I'm writing a film noir detective story or an action thriller, I kind of look at to try to understand what are the tropes and conventions, whether I want to defy those, whether I want to, but for me, conventions are important. So if the convention is that the hero is going to fall in love with the femme fatale, and I'm going to turn that on its head, I want to at least understand it so that I can make that choice.
Of course, you want to know what's already been done, so
Yeah.
you can say, okay, this is something I'm going to respect, and this is the norm, and this is something I'm going to play with and see what I can get away with,
Right.
and see if I can say, okay, no, they both die in a Romeo and Juliet way, and
Right.
That's something that hasn't been done, or you find something that you're like, what else did this? Nothing I can think of. Okay, I'll go with this.
And I know that some writers are like, I don't want to see any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to tell my story, and that's fine too. Everyone's different. Me, I like to
push the envelope.
I like to immerse myself into that genre and kind of study it. And I'll just kind of lay out all the beats, figure out what are the various beats. I won't even think about how this breaks into issues yet. For me, I'm still cracking the story. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so this is ultimately like the end of Act 1. And this is, I actually still, in a lot of ways, see it all as a movie.
Yeah.
But then once I have this larger story and I kind of go, okay, well, here are the different parts, then it's like, okay, well, how is this all breaking down? And then I ask myself more comic related questions like, okay, the first issue's got to set up a ton of things. Am I setting up the world, the character? What's the best cliffhanger for the end of issue 1? How fast or slow do I want the story to go? And try to figure out all the way in which it'll break down into issues. And this is obviously something that like has completely changed for me even over the past 2 years, because when I started, I didn't know.
Of course.
Yeah, so it was very...
You figure it out as you go along.
Yeah.
As you learn, as you get better, you got to put in your 10,000 hours, so to speak, and make it happen.
And your process changes. And so, I'll start off in a very loose brainstorming process where I'm just writing to myself. Another thing that Robert McKee said is that when you're brainstorming, you cannot brainstorm by just sitting on the couch and thinking. You have to write it all down. The moment that you write it down, now it's on paper, and you actually are, when you review it or read it back to yourself, you're using a different part of your brain to process it, and you're reacting to it. So someone who goes, I'm going to go write today by just sitting on the couch and thinking all day, I mean, that might be the early part of the exercise, but you have to write all those thoughts down. And what better way than to so I'll open up a document and just type to myself for hours just to get it all out. And then once I have all of that brainstorm, go through it all. What are the parts? Start to make sense of it all. Start to think about, well, where's the beginning and the end and the structure of all of this.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of people I've met who have said, oh, I'm a comic book writer. And they're like, yeah, I haven't written anything, but it's all in my head and it's perfect in my head. And all my stories are perfect in my head too.
Yeah, right.
But to get them out there is the whole challenge. And no matter what, you just have to start going and just being that writer and saying, okay, I can't tell you how many times I've started with page 1, panel 1, what am I doing again? Okay, hold on. Let me go back and look at the outline. And
There are some writers out there that can just sit down and start on issue 1 and have no clue where they're going,
Yeah.
and God bless them.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of
No.
writer, and personally, I would much rather think about how everything connects, so that hopefully by the time someone reads something, they feel that everything is tied together.
and you get that emotional connection with the reader, which I think it's all about. I think it's just about can you make that reader feel something for these characters? Because if not, you're kind of wasting your time. If they don't feel for these characters, if these characters aren't someone they relate to, then you're kind of talking to a brick wall.
Yeah. I think there's a ton of cool stories and comics that start off with really cool worlds and stuff, but character that you identify with, that you really want to stay with for a long time, that's special. And so I'm always trying to get that.